So, Game 3 was Saturday, in which the Miami Heat took a win in their first game back on their home court. Behind Jimmy Butler's 30-point performance and a 20-point outburst from Duncan Robinson, the Miami Heat now take a convincing 2-1 lead, with many questions surrounding the Milwaukee Bucks, and specifically Giannis Antetokounmpo. And that right there is the story of the series, guys. You see, in Game 1, Giannis injured his back going for a layup after Kevin Love attempted to take a charge on him. He tried to walk it off, but ultimately couldn't, and was unfortunately ruled out for the rest of that game. And since then, he has not played. The Miami Heat were able to capitalize on this, as the Bucks were obviously scrambling to figure out how to win without Giannis. Jimmy Butler had 35 points in this game, 22 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists came from Bam Adebayo. Gabe Vincent pitched in 15, Caleb Martin pitched in 15. Tyler Hero had 12 points of his own, and Kevin Love pitched in 18 points off the bench. Looking to the Bucks side, it was a struggle. Jrue Holiday only had 16 points and shot 6 of 18 from the field. Brook Lopez didn't really do much offensively. They tried almost everything, but ultimately the Miami Heat were able to come away with the win. And Giannis' injury is a very big deal. Now, the Milwaukee Bucks were able to come away in Game 2 with the victory, but of course, they changed their game plan. They were on their home court. They hit 25 threes in this game. They got steady contributions from guys like Brook Lopez. Grayson Allen had 16 points of his own. 22 points came from Pat Connaughton off the bench, and 17 from Joe Ingles as well. It was a near perfect performance, but if that's how good the role players have to play for them to win, I'm not really liking their chances. Now, Game 3 went how probably a lot of people expected it to. The Miami Heat were back at home. The Milwaukee Bucks struggled. Like I talked about earlier, it was Jimmy Butler and Duncan Robinson who led the way. The difference from Game 2 to Game 3 is night and day, and a large part of that is due to home court. Oftentimes, role players rely on the court and atmosphere to improve their play, especially when it comes to the playoffs. But then once we get to hostile environments like Miami can be, things can go south. Chris Middleton and Jrue Holiday just aren't really enough to overcome the loss of Giannis Antetokounmpo. Game 4 is now looking like a series-defining game. Now, I do expect Giannis to play, but right now, who knows? And even if he does play, will the Milwaukee Bucks be able to take this game? Because we do know the Miami Heat played the Bucks very well. And then another question that arises is that if the Bucks are able to even scrape and claw their way through this series, how good of a chance do they have of going all the way? There's some big issues on this team. The biggest issue for this team is obvious. It's Giannis Antetokounmpo. Like I talked about earlier, he injured his back in Game 1 and it's been bad ever since. He's been diagnosed with a lower back contusion, and right now Mike Budenholzer is saying that they're going to continue to monitor him. There's no clear answer on his injury, when it'll heal, and how it'll impact his play, and only time will tell how much it'll affect him. Now, I personally fully expect Giannis to play in Game 4, as it is essentially do or die. But just how good will he be? Giannis Antetokounmpo versus the Heat does struggle, sometimes in the playoffs, sometimes in the regular season, and a big part of that is Bam Adebayo and his defense. Bam Adebayo is one of the best vertical leapers we have in the NBA today. An incredible defender. He always finishes at the top of Defensive Player of the Year voting. So Giannis already sees this as a tough battle, and it's playoffs. The intensity is higher, people are playing more physical, and you add that on top of the fact that he does have that back injury, which is one of the worst injuries you can have in any sport. It's real worrisome. And like I said, if they do move on, how would his back match up against a potential matchup against the New York Knicks, who look like they're going to win their series against the Cleveland Cavaliers? The New York Knicks are very physical, with guys like Mitchell Robinson and Julius Randle down low. And if they move on from them, how would they match up in a potential series against either the Sixers or the Celtics? And it's like, once you move on further and further and further down the playoffs, more and more questions arise. What happens if he re-aggravates it? Something happens during a game and he needs an injection or something, and he has to come out of the game for a quarter or however long. Just imagine how hesitant Giannis could be with that injury, taking more jump shots, and that being an area that is a weakness for him at this point. There's too many questions for me to really trust his back at this moment. And outside of that, how much are we trusting these other guys? Just how much would they be able to lean on Jrue Holiday? Just how much would they be able to lean on Chris Middleton? I feel like those two will give you guys steady production as to be expected. But like I said, what about the other guys? Things get hostile, and will their role players be able to handle that? Will guys like Pat Connaughton and Joe Ingles be able to handle that? What about Jay Crowder, who has been abysmal so far in the playoffs? Can Brook Lopez continue his success that he found in the regular season? What about Bobby Portis? Not to mention what this does to your game plan. For the entire season, you've been planning on having Giannis Antetokounmpo as a #1 option. Now, if he's not there, things are shifting, things are changing, and trying to have a quick turnaround in the playoffs is a recipe for disaster. Look, man, we don't know what the future holds, but right now, I'm not too sure about the Milwaukee Bucks. I had them as favorites coming out of the Eastern Conference, but with the way the Boston Celtics are playing, with the way the Philadelphia 76ers are playing, I'm not too sure anymore. I'm praying that Giannis can come back and be fine, but at the end of the day, we just have to be realistic. He's a 7-foot freak of nature who relies heavily on his athleticism. It's a lot to think about, man. We're going to have more and more questions as we get deeper and deeper into the series and deeper into the playoffs. But as of right now, I'm very worried for the Milwaukee Bucks, and I don't know if they can accomplish what they set their minds to this season.